social media in general, it's like anything else. You got to know how to use it, but it's very addicting and it's easy, obviously, to just get sucked into that stream. And I'm not necessarily proud to admit this, but, I have some friends who are doing really well and I had to mute them. I muted them on Instagram because, honestly, I'm happy for them, but I was tired of comparing myself and my achievements to theirs. It was actually generating a bit of jealousy for me. And I thought, you know what, let me go to their page when I'm in the right mental state to go there. I want to control when I see that.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's episode, I bring you a very special conversation I had with a very good friend of mine, Rajiv, Satyal, comedian known for his clean sense of humor. Now, this conversation was actually a part of the Thrive State Summit, an event where I put together 50 thought leaders in mental and emotional wellness to give people the tools to elevate their sense of mental health and well-being. And you could actually access this summit by becoming one of our members. Check out mythrivestate.com to find out more about the Thrive State community and how you can get access to the Thrive State Summit, as well as the Thrive State Activator and the Thrive State Accelerator courses on our platform. If this is your first time to the Thrive State Podcast, welcome in. I get to be your host and part of our own journey of self-discovery and elevation. And if you're returning to the podcast, thank you so much for being a loyal listener. You can actually help this podcast grow by leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. Again, please enjoy this conversation, one taken from the Thrive State Summit, which again, you can access by going to mythrivestate.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Rajiv Satyal. Hello and welcome back to another session of the Thrive State Summit. With me is a good friend. I met him actually right when I got back from internship from Hawaii. He was just moving to LA to become a comedian. He is a versatile host known for his clean, TV-friendly humor. He's embarked on his comedy journey in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it has achieved remarkable milestones throughout his career. Rajiv has entertained diverse audiences, from performing for tennis great Pete Sampras in a locker room to opening for Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in front of 17,000 people. His viral I Am Indian video has been viewed over 100 million times, even introduced the Prime Minister at international events. As a trail-blazing comedian, Rajiv was the first to perform an hour of stand-up in India, paving the way for others. He shared the stage with comedy giants like Russell Peters, Tim Allen, Sebastian Maniscalco, Joy Coy, Kevin Nealon, and Dave Chappelle. He's also made history by performing comedy on all 7 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my good friend, Rajiv Satyal.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kien Vu. Dr. Vu, thanks so much for having me on. I should bring you to all my shows to introduce me. You did that with such vim and vigor.
My brother, you are someone that has really, truly kind of followed your passion. And, here in this mental health summit, we know so many people, get into issues of mental health because they're living a life that's inauthentic to who they are. For you, what was that striking moment to say, you know what, I'm going to leave behind what's comfortable and what I know, what I went to school for, to, follow, your heart and this uncertainty? What was that process like?
I turned 30 and I flipped out, and people always say age is just a number. I'm like, all right, well then your weight is just a number and your blood pressure are just numbers. It's systolic, diastolic, right? So, the thing is, numbers have value, which implies they have meaning. And for me, some people live their life like that. Age is just a number, to each his own. That's fine if that's the way you believe. But for me, I think it is a mile marker. It was important for me to realize I had spent 30 years of my life in Ohio. It's a big world. Let's go try something else. And I had been doing stand-up comedy on the side for 4 years when I was working at Procter & Gamble. I thought, you know what? If I don't make this leap now, I never will, because the idea of doing it scared me to death. And I went, this is unacceptable. I'm 30 years old. I can't be scared to death to move from one part of the same country to another part of the same country. That's crazy. Like, my parents came here to the United States from India. They were in their 20s, early 30s, and they left everything they know to go across the planet. It can't be that hard to go from Ohio to California.
And, really, you made quite a leap. Was there something that was burning in you, that you knew as a child that this is something that needed to express itself at some point in your life?
Yeah, I'd say around the age of 6 or so, I knew I wanted to do something different. I didn't know what that was. 6 is very early. And, you're just kind of going, I looked around already, though, and I was already having these feelings of like, is this all there is? Like living in the suburbs and then you have kids and they have kids and they have kids. And, that's great. That's how 99.9% of the world likes to live, or probably, I don't know if it's that high. Maybe it's not that high, but it is a high percentage of people that do want to live that way. And I thought, you know what? I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something different.
And let's talk a little bit about comedy and mental health. You make so many people laugh, but yet we know probably some of the most famous comedians, including, one of our speakers' fathers, Robin Williams, brought so much joy to others, but was still suffering from mental health issues within. As a comedian, what can you, give in terms of perspective on sort of happiness and mental health? And, what's it like for somebody who makes jokes all the time to make others happy? Does it automatically mean that you're happy within?
That's a great question. And I think at this point, it's even a trope to remember that a lot of comedians are, sort of the tears of a clown kind of thing. You're making everyone else happy and you may be sad inside. And a lot of comedians are. Now, Jerry Seinfeld says that he doesn't think that's necessary. He didn't tell me that personally, but I read that he said, I have met him, but that's not what we covered. Anyway, he has talked about how, you don't need to have comedy come from pain. I think a lot of people say that, tragedy plus time equals comedy. And I think that is true and can be true. But it can just be that you're a clever person who thinks of funny things. That said, I think making others happy does make you happy. I don't know if making others laugh makes you happy. The reason being that a lot of the time you're dredging up your own memories of pain and you're putting a spin on them. So you're still reliving them in a sense. I mean, you're doing it comedically, but people are laughing with you, at you. It may be hard to tell the difference sometimes and say, well, I'm playing a character named Rajiv, Satyal, or Kevin Hart, or Jerry Seinfeld, or Joe Coy, or whomever it is. Yes, but you're still a human being. You're a person. And when you're up there talking to the crowd, people take it that it's you. So it's hard to separate, Jay-Z, I'm a businessman, I'm a businessman. Yes, you're both of those things, but it's more to remember the side to take care of yourself, because you're making people happy, it may make you happy. Making them laugh, it may not be.
So you've taken sort of your career to a different level. Not only are you still doing lots of great comedies, lots of shows, live performances, TV, you've got your own podcast, but, I saw you recently speak to corporations on happiness. Mm-hmm. What decides you to sort of pivot and speak to, number one, this audience, and why the topic of happiness?
I think happiness is the ultimate goal for most of the things that we're trying to achieve. I think at the age of 10, I had written it down, which was what I wanted out of life was to be happy. No one told me that. And that doesn't mean I'm some kind of genius. I mean, might mean that, but I don't think that's what it is. What it is that it's universal. I think it's something if you sit down at almost any age and go, well, what do you want out of life? I think it was the Buddha who, though, said, you don't want to start sentences with I want. When you're saying I want happiness, I'm still miserable, because you're starting with I want. And happiness, what I've read and heard and watched, it's a byproduct, right? It's a journey, not a destination. We've heard that so many times. My point of saying that and quoting something so cliched is to say, you're not sitting there going, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be happy. You're hopefully doing things that will in turn then make you happy. And that's the net result of what you're trying to do. So I think all of the things that we're trying to do, ultimately we're laddering up to happiness.
Oh, and so let's give some practical, tips here. You mentioned, I think a lot of people say, the have, do, be things. Sometimes people feel like you need to have certain things in order to do certain things so that you could finally be this. But it could also be the other way around, that maybe happiness is a state of being, but it's also a state of doing that can elicit that. So what are some, I know that you've got some really practical tips in terms of how certain people might be able to elicit more happiness into their own lives.
For me, it comes down to something I like to call the happiness quotient, right? It's looking at the numerator and the denominator and looking at things that people over the years have said. Even Boys to Men in the 90s had sung, the good times that made us laugh outweigh the bad. So what they're saying is, they're not saying that it's all rose-colored glasses through which we're seeing the past and saying it was all perfect. We're just saying the good times outweighed the bad. And a lot of the time that is what we're trying to do. I think it was Epicurus who wrote or said, obviously many centuries ago, let me make sure I get the exact quote right. But he said, if you want to make a man happy, do not add to his riches, but take away from his desires. And a lot of that, we can remove the gender part of it now if you want to make a person happy. But a lot of the time is like, how do we increase the things that make us happy and decrease the things that make us unhappy? It's a very, very simple formula. I mean, obviously, that's very, very basic math, very basic division. But I think that there are certain things we can start doing right away. And one of them you were talking about, Kien, when you just said the be and the do and the have. A lot of it is being optimistic, just taking on an optimistic mindset. And what I said in my speech to Procter & Gamble was, when we break out into two types of groups, we're going to go on lunch break soon and whatever else, or whatever it was at the time, coffee break. And two types of circles are going to form. You're going to have people who are saying, this conference, this speaker, this day, it's not that great. They're just kind of dump all over it. And then you have other people who are looking for the good and going, hey, I actually got something out of that speaker. I thought that the conference was pretty well together. I put something like this together before, and it's not easy. Get out of the negative circle and actually walk over to a positive circle and keep moving until you find one. The other option you have is to make your negative circle a positive circle. So I joked about how if you find a negative circle, that's where the comedians are going to be, because we're the ones who are always dumping all over everything. But of course, that's a joke. And that's my point. Also, you would ask about whether it makes you happy. It's funny, but that doesn't necessarily mean happy. So that was a practical tip I gave to people right away, which was when you're breaking out at an event, try to gravitate towards people who are positive, because optimists have more fun. I mean, maybe we're wrong, but that's at the very end, and we could be spectacularly wrong. But along the journey, not only the destination, we're having a good time.
No, I think that's one of the things that have been reiterated by so many speakers is community. Because not only do you adopt, people that support you and things like that, but you adopt their energy. Mm-hmm. People with optimism carry this energy that is inviting, that is lively, that is elevated in frequency and emotions. And as human beings, we're connected. Our nervous systems are connected. So when you step into that group that is more optimistic, you're going to adopt that nervous system of people seeing the best out of life.
Absolutely. Could not agree more.
What else you got for us?
Well, I mean, honestly, being grateful. And, you hear this a lot about like sitting in a place of gratitude. Yeah, I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, but I had asked my friends for some tips on happiness. And I remember what my friend wrote to me, and he said, my wife and I offer a toast at dinner every night. Over the years, we learned to toast only what happened today rather than what we hope will happen tomorrow. Doing so makes it a practice of gratitude instead of wish fulfillment. And I loved that. I just loved the idea of sitting in a place of gratitude, because it seems like sometimes when we start being grateful, we're like, yes, but this would also be good, and this would also be good. It's like, I know, but can we practice gratitude in and of itself? And I think that was a very practical tip for me too, instead of just sitting in a place of it going, I'm going to give thanks for what I have today and not necessarily ask for something tomorrow.
Gratitude is one of those super important practices. And, another happiness expert I know, Sean Acor, who also speaks to a lot of corporations, has some really practical exercises. One being, just sending out an email or text every single day. If you do this for 21 days, you'll start to feel a real shift in your body, and just really thanking and appreciating them for who they are. Not only does it make you feel great right when you send it, but once you send it, it makes that person feel pretty awesome. And, the plus side is if they sent you something back and just said, oh my God, I really needed to hear that today, it brings that back to you. And gratitude is something that can be done so simply that, you can do while you brush your teeth. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned was so important is bringing something up that you can be grateful for that day. That you don't have to look so far back that you start to see that every single day, no matter how mundane, you could always pick something up, and it's magic. And if you could feel it, it's actually happening in your body. And we know that the emotion of gratitude actually lowers inflammatory markers like IL-1, IL-6, TNF alpha, and it actually raises your immune system. So
I love that, because I'm looking at my own gratitude journal that I keep daily. And, today's was, I'm grateful for the tacos that I brought back from Houston. Before that is, I'm grateful for my show going well. I'm grateful for my first class upgrade. I'm grateful for a fun night with a friend. I'm grateful for catching up on my emails. I'm grateful for the tennis match I had with my friend Adam. I'm grateful for a good walk. I'm grateful for this acting job today. I'm grateful for a fun dad's night out. I mean, they don't have to be big. but there are things that happened within the last 12 to 24, and you're going, okay, I'm grateful for this right now. I'm still having that glow of that feeling of I hadn't played tennis in 15 years, and I was like, wow, I got on the court and I hit some balls. I wasn't great, but that's not the point. Focus on the part that was fun. It was sunny. Your friend asked you to play. You got out there. You got working legs. You can still move, and you could hit a few tennis balls around. I thought that was pretty cool.
Now, when you were speaking not necessarily to the most, I think, ideal crowd for a comedian. You were speaking to a bunch of IT people, right? So not only did you have to keep them entertained, but you have to give them tools to be able to take something so serious, in terms of bringing math and engineering together, in front of their computers every day and things that they could take home with them. What have you found that you shared with them was something that they appreciated most?
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for thrivestatestarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You can find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed, and please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
I think because they are IT people and engineers, scientists, and they think of things in terms of systems, that was a big thing, is systems. And I'm an engineer. I got a degree in materials engineering. So I would be the third of those tips within the first sort of module that I was talking about, of being optimistic, being grateful. The other one was start thinking of energy as a resource, because we're used to thinking of money and time. Like, should I drive or fly to San Francisco? And we start doing the math in terms of the cost and the gas and how long it'll take. Right, but you're not taking into account how you'll feel once you get there. Are you up for that kind of a drive? Do you have the patience for it? Are you going to be tired? Are you going to be cranky? That's all energy. And people always say it's a straight shot. I'm like, well, the moon is a straight shot. That doesn't mean it's close. I think what's important when people say a straight shot, though, they're talking about it being easy. And this is why even Google Maps has it, where you could go fastest route or easiest route. And as I get older, when I was younger, I was like, who wants to do an easy route? I get me there as fast as I can go. But now as I get a little bit older, I go, I get the appeal of doing an easier route. That's energy. That's making sure that you're not making too many left turns, not too many right turns. I just want an easy drive. And I've got a little bit more time today. And so I think that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. I try to minimize the number of text messages that I have. And so what I usually do is when my phone chimes, I respond to the message underneath it. In other words, if Kien writes to me, I'm not going to write to you right away. I'm going to write to the person who pinged me earlier. If Alok wrote to me earlier, I'm pinging Alok back, and then I'm going to go like that and eventually get to you when the next person pings me. And if someone's going, well, how long are you making people wait? Well, how often does your phone chime? Pretty often, right? You don't have to worry. It's not a lake. It's a river. It's a complete stream and constant stream of texts that are coming through. And another one that I heard around that tip, and I have a lot of these, but I don't want to take up too much time with too many practical tips, was Ernest Hemingway, the writer. I don't think you have to explain who Ernest Hemingway was, but Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, granddaughter is one of our speakers, Muriel.
Oh, it's perfect. That's right. Okay, what a great tie-in. That's right. One of your speakers is Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, so she will appreciate this. She might already know this. So Ernest Hemingway would literally stop in the middle of a sentence so he knew where to pick up the next day. So you may not be writing The Old Man and the Sea, but you could use this when you're writing your next memo or your next reco. Just start the next section and you'll return with momentum. And that seemed to really resonate with people because sometimes we look at a blank page or blank space if you're a Swiftie. You're looking at a blank page and it's terrifying. But if you have a sentence coming into it, you know where to start. You may know where to go.
That's beautiful. It looks like you broke things down into a module. I can potentially see a course coming out of it. So how are you chunking down these different type of practical tips? And you want to go over maybe some of those modules and maybe one or two nuggets that might be great for people to take home?
Sure. I think that, we're looking at the numerator and the denominator. We're looking at things that are going to increase our happiness and decrease our unhappiness. And so those are kind of like the two broad modules. But then there are things that I'm doing where I'm kind of going, defining yourself accurately, looking at, how you look at things versus how maybe someone else looks at things. The law of averages, reducing miscommunication. A lot of this is communication. I feel like so many of our fights and arguments and spats are, well, I didn't mean that, or you took that out of context, or this is what I was really trying to say. Just really probing for clarity. So I have a lot of tips and tricks around that too. And my point being that this was, or to your point, actually, this was a very, buttoned up audience that wanted practical tips. I can wax philosophical. I can give you tips on happiness within the dating world as well. I got married very late in life, had a kid very late in life. So I can look at things as like, oh gosh, when I was single, what did that feel like? Or now being married, some tips and tricks for that too. So I think that the module is very much flex depending on where you are in your life.
Oh, well, so good. Let's talk a little bit about something that I know when we polled our audience and what causes, some mental angst, which is really this concept of FOMO, or the fear of missing out. I guess, on top of that is some sort of, mental discomfort associated with comparisons or something like that. So can you maybe, talk about where you think this thing comes from and how it actually is affecting the mental well-being of other people?
I think it's good that we named this FOMO a few years ago, and people, I think, were talking about it, especially in relation to Instagram and, social media in general. It's like anything else, you got to know how to use it, but it's very addicting and it's easy, obviously, to just get sucked into that stream. And I'm not necessarily proud to admit this, but, I have some friends who are doing really well and I had to mute them. I muted them on Instagram because, honestly, I'm happy for them, but I was tired of comparing myself and my achievements to theirs. It was actually generating a bit of jealousy for me. And I thought, you know what, let me go to their page when I'm in the right mental state to go there. I want to control when I see that. I may not be in the mode right now to see everyone's achievements. And then you could be like, well, then why are you on Instagram? It's like, well, right. But sometimes Instagram can be a stress reliever too. It's fun to see the pictures. It's fun to see different things. But if you're in direct competition with people, maybe you don't need to see that right now. And you can chalk out some time when you're in that space to see it, and you can manage it a little bit better. And that way you'll also be happier for people when you're in the mindset to receive it. Because what I was doing is, and they say sometimes, don't compare your insides to everybody else's outsides, right? You're comparing how you're feeling. You're seeing only what people are showing you. So if people go, well, then why are you seeing it when you want to see it? Well, that people are sharing it when they want to share it. Why not receive it when you want to receive it and when you're good and ready to do that? So to me, it was like, yes, I might be doing well and someone else may be doing whatever, but I was internally comparing everybody else's pile to mine. Well, of course, everybody else's pile stacked on top of each other. Somebody booked a TV pilot, somebody had a baby, somebody went to, Argentina. Right. You didn't do all three of those things in one day, but I've been to Argentina. I've done TV. I've whatever other things that I've done. It's like, yes, if you stack them all together against everybody else's and the more people you follow, it can get you down. So I think the idea of, again, managing that energy flow is really, really important. And that will help you hopefully prevent FOMO and move towards what you like to call JOMO.
Right. The joy of missing out, which really also, I think comes back down to gratitude. That recognizing that where you are in every moment, it is exactly where you're meant to be. And I like to pick up, and I don't know how you like to do it, but I almost sort of like to, I start to know now that almost everything in life, even the biggest struggles and the complications of my daughter's birth, somebody stealing several $100,000 from me, and looks at those situations and going, oh my God, this stuff happened and this sucks. But the level of awareness, consciousness, my ability to forgive people, my ability to be able to be more comfortable with every single moment has built this emotional soul muscle that I wouldn't have gotten outside of those situations. And
Wow.
if I could remember those things, then I almost turned every time I get triggered to compare. I'm like, oh, I catch myself there. I'm like, okay, what can I look for in my life right now that is evidence of how life is acting for me instead of against me? Do you have something similar when you find yourself getting triggered in FOMO? And do you have your version of JOMO?
That is good. And I'm sorry for what you've gone through, but it obviously seems like you've come out stronger for it. And I think that's really very, very admirable. I think there is the idea of, the law of averages. And I remember things have a way of reverting to the mean. And at the University of Cincinnati, where I got my undergrad degree, I got a B in a class. And this is before the plus minus system. It was a long time ago. And I got a B instead of an A. And that's a big deal when you're working on your GPA. And I really felt like I should have had an A. So I marched into Dean Young's office and I was complaining about getting this B. And he sat quietly and he waited me out. And he looked at me and he said, Rajiv, you probably did deserve an A in this class, but admit that there were times where you got an A where you probably should have gotten a B. And after I got over my desire to just wring his neck, I thought, he's exactly right. It's just like when police officers pull you over and you're like, officer, I wasn't speeding. And they go, well, then this ticket is for all the other times that you were. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, just realizing that if things are going poorly, like Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. That's brilliant. Exactly. If you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop. Keep moving. Get going. And it's hard to find that strength sometimes, but I think that they've shown happiness. It really does you do revert to a mean. I think it's like 40%. It's like 50% your happiness set point, 10% of things that happen to you, and 40% how you look at those things. So 50%, if you've got a really low happiness set point, that's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie. That's going to be a challenge. And so people go through that and my heart goes out to them. And that's not something to breeze over. But 10% of the things that happen, that's all. Like 40% is how you look at it. Just like Charles Swindoll wrote in Attitudes, life is 10% of what happens and 90% how I react to it. So it turns out it may not be 90%, but even if it's 40 percentage points, that's a lot. That could take you from, hey, my happiness set point is a 30. That's not so great. No, but I control 40 more points. That can get me to a 70 out of 100. 70 out of 100 is a good place to be. I would say most people would say a 7 out of 10 is a pretty good day. So I would, again, turn to this idea of things revert to the mean, trying to work on recognizing that how you look at things, like you said, things are not happening to you, they're happening for you.
Absolutely. This is something that, I wonder as you were sitting, particularly in a work setting, we know that social media tends to be triggers for FOMO. I know for myself, if I get invitations to cool things and I look at my calendar and I can't do it, I suddenly feel triggered there as well. What do you find are additional triggers that people could find potentially at work? Maybe just comparing yourself to the next person. And do you have nice little tricks to be able to go, okay, I could quench this? I mean, I know you can potentially pause your social media feed in that respect, but if you find yourself getting triggered in other situations, what have you found to be useful in your life to be able to, reduce a little bit of that FOMO?
For me, again, to try to find the love of why I love doing what I'm doing, why I am where I am, and trying to find that and realizing that, dude, I mean, I've been to the event that night, and a lot of the time you're like, wasn't that great? And I was wondering what it'd be like to be at home on the couch watching Netflix, right? And you're kind of going, just because somebody is where they want to be doesn't mean that they are feeling like this is why I want to be here, right? I mean, they may be coming to that event or whatever it is differently. Oh, I didn't get invited to this and I wasn't invited to that. Yeah, I'm not saying that, there have been things I wasn't invited to last year that I have been invited to this year, and I worked at that. You can pick yourself up and go, there are always events. This is LA. Something's happening every single night. You can work on putting yourself in a situation instead of going, how come I missed that? And scrolling through Instagram going, I wasn't invited to that last night. Well, is there one next year? Can you get invited to the one next year? And can you work on that? But also taking a step back to go, why do I care about this? Why is this important? Is this going to help my family? Is this going to help my business? And if the answers to those questions are, yeah, it actually is going to help my business. If I'm at this event, it kind of will lead to some connections for me and it'll elevate my brand equity. Sure. Well, then I think you're probably focusing on it for the right reasons. If you're going, well, that person was there and I'm better than that person, I should be there too. Well, I don't know that that's really the best reason for you to want to be there. I think it should be focused again on why things are important to you. Like, again, is it going to help your family? Is it going to help your business? If it's not helping either one of those two things, I'm not really sure what the purpose is.
Such great practical stuff from you today. And, before we get to your very generous gift for the VIPs, where do people find you, your work, when you do your next show? I understand you not only have the Funny Indian newsletter, but you've got a new brand podcast and newsletter coming. How do people learn more about those things?
Well, thank you for mentioning that and setting me up, Dr. Vu. So what's happening is the name of my talk is called Gruntled. It is the opposite of disgruntled. So people who are dissatisfied, we want to move you over to be gruntled. It is a word, and you can ask maybe, Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, is that a word? They'll know the English language pretty well. So yes, it is a word. It means to be pleased, to be satisfied, and that's really what we're going for. So I will have a Gruntled toolkit, and it will include some philosophy, some practicality. And if you sign up and join me now as part of the VIP package, you will receive a copy of that.
Well, that's beautiful. And just a reminder, not only you're going to get the Gruntled toolkit when you do the VIP, but when you're doing the VIP, you're supporting 4 mental health nonprofits, including Good Days, the Trevor Project, Rare Impact, and Genius Recovery. You'll be supporting those, and then you're getting all these additional talks that you get to keep for a lifetime, the transcripts from the talks, and again, these very special gifts that our speakers are sharing. Rajiv, Satyal, Funny Indian, I appreciate the laughs today. I appreciate our friendship, and how we've sort of pivoted our life to follow our calling. And I really thank you for your wisdom, your laughs today on the Thrive State Summit.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Vu. Kien, as I know you on a first name basis as well. You can find me at Funny Indian. I forgot to plug my own thing on LinkedIn. I'm Funny Indian. On Instagram, I'm Funny Indian. So look me up there if you have any questions or thoughts. But thank you for including me in Thrive State. It's an honor to be a part of it.
Thanks, brother.
I hope you enjoy that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions, where we do breathwork, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How do you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle, where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.